Here's a way I like to conceptualize inner child work to make it more accessible, clear, and applicable, actually useful for you. It is a term that you will actually hear in, quote unquote, regular therapy. I mean, it is part of Freud, Carl Jung, and it's also something that, especially now, you can see in very sort of, mystical, like flowery, heal your inner child, and it can be very in that space too. And so people can have different reactions to it depending on how they're hearing about it. I like to think of it simply as a way of relating to yourself, a way of conceptualizing and experiencing the same thoughts, feelings, emotions that arise in all of us, but relating to them with more compassion and curiosity and sort of empathy that actually helps the emotions process and helps you move forward because you are seeing them as the inner child, as the young kid that you were when these emotions were formed, when these reactive patterns were created. So, for example, a feeling of overwhelming terror arises in your life, and it's perhaps in response to something your partner says to you. Maybe a comment that's seemingly a little flippant, and there's a response from you that's not exactly seemingly all that rational to what they said. Two ways of being with that. One is the very adult way we often do, which is like, I'm really triggered by this. And if you're into this type of work and you're introspective, you might be saying, why am I still having this? This is too much of a response. You might be judging yourself. I should be over this by now. I should be more healed. This shouldn't trigger me so much. You may also project it onto them. They shouldn't be doing that. They shouldn't be saying that, etc. Now, the exact same reaction that you could have all of the exact same scientific responses to, right? The limbic system, the nervous system, the emotional response, what it triggered in your unconscious as far as the memory that it brought up, right? Exact same stuff, same feelings. But when those feelings arise, you look at them as though, where is this coming from? And it usually is from a young childhood experience. But if you were to imagine a child of that age or a young age coming up to you with a similar type of response, right? So if you have kids, or if there's a young person, niece, nephew, young child you've mentored or anything of the sort, coming up to you with that, oh my God, this person said this and they don't love me anymore, or I'm really scared and I'm overwhelmed and I'm terrified. Naturally, for most of us, there's going to be a different way of relating to that experience, right? You might get down on your knee. You might be listening more. You might naturally be more empathetic and just soothing, and knowing that it's not just about factual information, right? So you are far less likely to say to that young child, well, no, that's silly, and here's a book about relationship dynamics, and you can, or it's just your shadow ego part, and you need to work through that, and you should be further along by now, right? That's like way disconnected from how you would speak to a child, but we often speak that way when we're dealing with our own stuff. So again, relating to the exact same response as though it was a child coming to you can engage a lot of the right ways of being. It's not about right or wrong, but it's generally way more productive to have that curiosity, compassion, empathy, and all the stuff that I find works. And with whether you're doing EFT tapping or just being present with what you're feeling, that way is far more productive. So again, it doesn't have to be mythologized like, okay, there's this inner being, and like that, you might not really resonate with that. So it might be literally the exact same physical, scientifically explainable reactions from the mind, from the nervous system, from past specific events. But seeing them that way can unlock a lot of powerful ways of being with yourself. Another useful component about this is if an actual young child is coming up to you in distress, it's not about like tips and tricks to just make that child go away, right? That's a very, again, dehumanizing way of looking at it. And sometimes I've gotten questions about that. Like, yeah, I try to do this inner child thing and it seems very abstract, or I don't really get what I'm supposed to be doing, or there's this sort of mythological idea that like, well, if I just heal the inner child, everything is going to be okay. But like, where is it? What is it? Right? but it's the reactions that coming up, the fear, the guilt, the shame, the doubts that you have, the triggered moments that you have, and the way of actually being present. So it really is a relationship type of dynamic rather than like, okay, what do I got to say to this kid so that I can be healed and get what I want? And a lot of times it gets twisted that way because everything in our culture does, right? Heal your inner child so you can make more money. And then it's like, okay, well, what's the tapping thing to do to just make that child okay so I can make the money? It's not about that. There may be a side effect of that, but it's having this more compassionate relationship with yourself, with your thoughts, feelings, and emotions as they arise. You can read a little more about that approach in an ebook I have. It's free in the description, and compassion tapping process I do, which is basically just leaning into that, right? The thoughts, feelings come up, whether you call it inner child work or not. You could just get really sad and scared and you're confused as to why, but you just do a visualization of sorts. Could even be a pet, for example. It's the same kind of premise where I'm conceptualizing that emotion as though it's this young, vulnerable part of me, which, by the way, it in many ways actually is, right? Because it's your nervous system responding from the age when that situation first happened that never really got processed. So there was an interaction with your parents, or your mom left you alone somewhere or something and had this overwhelming fear response, and then it was just sort of dismissed, or you weren't really being given a space to kind of process through that and be made to feel safe. And so now your partner makes that comment, and it is a 4-year-old. You turn into a 4-year-old, essentially. So it's not even that inaccurate. But if you see it that way versus blaming yourself, why am I as a 44-year-old reacting like a 4-year-old? Now there's guilt and shame, and it's not very productive. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. I'm not saying that's the be-all, end-all of inner child or inner child work. It's a powerful subject with a lot of nuances, but I find that to be a very practical framework as far as how to think about it and explore it, whether or not you have like a course on inner child healing or something, just literally taking the emotions that come up in your life and experimenting with relating to them in that way. So hope it helps. Any questions, comments, I'd love to hear them, and I hope to connect with you soon. All right, thanks.